Boom. Welcome to the Attunement Podcast. I'm here with my friend Samek, and I'll introduce him. Samek has done a shit ton of meditation, probably like 1,500 to 2,000 hours. He's gone to the depths of very weird, scary places in meditation, but he's also still here with us, and he seems pretty normal to me. And we've done a lot of emotional work together. And we've done a lot of pure inquiry or conversational meditation together. And we wanted to start a podcast talking about what we're learning. And Samek, you can introduce me.
Yeah. Hello there. I'm going to introduce Harry. Harry is awesome. Met him like last year and like blown away by the amount of emotional work he's done on his own. And also we've done a shit ton of emotional work together. And blows me away all the ways he's done, all the work he's done on schooling and like summer schools. And I'm excited to share our journeys together.
And I think you meant to say summer camps, but I'll take it.
Yeah, summer camps. Did I say summer schools?
Yeah, but thank you for
a
kind introduction. All right, let's do it.
Yeah. Do you want to? Let's start with you. What's the first thing, like what's something you learned this week that blew you away?
Many things. I mean, the two definitely come to mind. One, which we'll definitely get into more, is the conversation we had with you. As you already know, if you're listening to this, me and Samek are both very intellectual people. You probably know at least one of us, but also whatever. You're probably an intellectual person too if you're watching this. And we had this crazy conversation where Samek was trying to not be heady. And then I was like, what if you just go all the way into your head? Just let it rip. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the most embodied I've ever seen you. And so now I'm doing that a little bit more. So that kind of blew my mind. And then the one that's more alive for me was one this morning, which is basically like, I'm scared to be judged for being woo or spiritual. This is not a new age podcast. Don't judge us as new age. Give me a fucking chance. But I have like this deep feeling of basically the thing that Siri, no, not you, Siri. The thing that would lead to us being friends or not being friends is more about my relationship with myself and more about your relationship with yourself than it is about like my trauma or your trauma. And the way I see that as a metaphor, not as new age truth, is like there's like a spirit coming out of my back, and that's like my relationship with myself. And then there's like traumatized mortal version of Harry right here, which like but the clear way to see this for me is Aubrey Plaza, who's probably my biggest celebrity crush, or at least used to be. I'll say still my celebrity crush. And Aubrey Plaza is like super anxious and super awkward. And I'm not attracted to Aubrey Plaza's anxiety and awkwardness. And I'm so attracted to her relationship with her anxiety and her awkwardness, which is just owning it so fucking hard and leaning in so hard and like not giving a fuck what anyone else thinks and thinking she's hilarious, and she is. So that's like a great example of this thing, which is like, whoa, wait, shouldn't like potential friends or like women I'm interested in, wouldn't they be disgusted by like my disgust and my shame and whatever? And it's like, oh, the thing they actually care about is like my relationship to my disgust and the relationship to my shame, not those things themselves.
Okay, I'm curious about how that changed your relationship with dance. I know you went dancing this week, and there was a massive difference after having an insight into how you relate to your shame, how you relate to your disgust and embodiment of it. And I'm curious how that actually showed up for you when you went to dance this week.
So swing dance was 2 days ago, and I had this specific insight I just mentioned today,
Mm.
but the insights that affected swing dance for me were more about but still about my relationship to shame and my relationship to my mom and my relationship to women in general. But I mean, the outcome was swing dance was just like the most, I would say, safe. Like normally it's like, oh my, normally it's like there's all these strangers, all these random women, like someone might get mad at me. I feel anxious that I like need to seek this person's approval, or someone might get mad at me, even though probably won't happen, or has literally never happened at swing dance. But it's just like easily the least anxious I've ever been, and like the most capacity I've had for it, and the most fun I've had. Yeah.
So how do you think it will change now that you've had this insight then? If you went to swing dancing next week?
Well, I'm scared. I'm scared that I'll be even more expansive and joyful. And it's I want to say the broccoli error thing if people don't know it, but it's a broccoli error on being very joyful and big at swing dance. And broccoli error, which you already know, but for anyone listening, is imagine I hate broccoli. All right, so I'm like 7, I hate broccoli. And then my parents like, but you could learn to like broccoli if you just try it more. I'm like, I don't want to learn to like broccoli because then I'll eat more broccoli, and I hate broccoli. But this is fake, because if I like broccoli, then eating it won't be a problem. So right now I still have the conditioning of like being joyful and big and expansive and feeling my sexuality in the presence of strangers and women I'm attracted to is a problem. And that's bad and anxiety provoking. And so I'm scared to just like it and enjoy it, because then I'll do it more. But if I like it and enjoy it, then it won't be a problem. So I expect it to just be more of that direction. I really don't know yet if it's going to be like super different or if it's going to be like a step in the right direction. But I expect at least a step in just like having more fun, being big and joyful and expressive.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah. W.
Big W.
What's the thing you're most excited about having learned this week about yourself?
It was the thing you initially shared of like, I can be in my head and I don't have to have any shame around it. As in, my head is completely a part of me, and expressing my headiness is as much of a gift as expressing my vulnerability. I think like before that conversation, there was an aspect of, oh yeah, I'm in my head. Oh no, you're going to see me as really intelligent. You're going to see me as smart, and you're going to like put me on a pedestal because of my intellect. And there was shame around that because I also put my intellect on a pedestal and I use it to oppress me. It's like, oh, I have all these intellectual ideas that are really good, all these models of how I should behave. And in a lot of ways, it's very correlated to my ego. My ego makes these models, and my ego is very attached to these models. And because of that, I get scared when I think of a really good idea, because then my ego has more power to oppress me. I get terrified when my ego is like, oh, here is how you should act, and it has like this perfect way of like perfectly attuned, perfectly understood way of acting in the world to get exactly what I want, and I'm not doing it, and then the ego can bully me with it. And there was an aspect of like, oh, fuck, I'm scared of my intellect. I am terrified of my intellect. And because of the fear of it, I wasn't letting myself be smart. I was like dumbing myself down. I was making myself stupid so that I didn't have to deal with my ego. So that I didn't have to deal with like all the models that I would create that my ego would now have as a tool to oppress me. And then we had a view conversation, and then you're like, I asked the question, how can I enjoy being in my head? And it was really just feeling through all the fear of that of being oppressed by my head.
Oh, wait. Pause. What happens if you keep talking about this, but you let it rip from your head like 10% more?
I think I'm letting it rip pretty well, but okay, let me fully embody my head in doing that. Yeah, as I was saying, yeah, I was like scared of the intellect, scared of what my ego would do with my thing, with the models I create. So I was neutering myself. And when I stopped doing that, the way I could stop doing that was actually feel through all the fears. And as I felt through more and more of the fear of my intellect, what started happening was I felt bigger. I gave myself permission to be in my intellect and not buy into the story that any of these models are actually true in any way, or like any of these models can actually oppress me. And then there was this bigness to it, like that's here now. Like I can just like be big and use these models, use my intellect fully with my heart. And it changed how I talked almost immediately. And it changed my like relationship with like people immediately. It was I would like interact with people, and like I was interacting with like a little bit of fear that I would say something too smart for them or some stupid bullshit like that. So I would always be not fully there, and that like changed and hasn't changed back fully. It's like I have now access to my head and my heart and my embodied self in a way that I never did before. Go for it.
Something, I just got chills saying that, and I actually said this to you in the view conversation already, but it hit me even more deeply now, seeing you become more embodied by being more in your head again right now, which like makes sense but is also counterintuitive for me. But it's just the way that like when something's green, it's taking in all of the colors except for green, and like green is the one it's reflecting back. And so when someone's heady, really they're resisting being heady. And when someone's anxious, really that means they resist their anxiety, right? Like the person who's always anxious is obviously not actually feeling and loving their anxiety, because if they were feeling and loving their anxiety, they would not constantly be reflecting anxiety onto everyone else. Yeah,
Beautifully put. It's like the more I let myself be heady, the less heady I come across. Very much golden algorithm AOA style.
It's like it makes so much sense and it makes so little sense at the same time.
It's very much like a permissioning that like opened the door for me. Like, at least now I feel more embodied, just allowing myself to be heady, and that's fucking great.
Man, I can't get over that. I'm down. And is there anything else you want to say on the thing?
I think that was most of it. I'm like excited to have this recorded because this was a massive shift for me, and it still is. And I'm curious about how it'll integrate into me in the future.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay, moving back to Harry. What's another thing that happened this week? What's another insight you gained that felt like it's like, whoa, this changes how I see things?
Yeah, it's definitely about women. It's definitely related to my mom. I'm also thinking about how I want to talk about this, given that this is a public-ish podcast or a fully public podcast. But one way to say it is I think I didn't feel seen by my mom as a kid, and I felt like I had to caretake my mom as a kid. And I think I've basically been projecting that onto women, especially women I'm attracted to my whole life. Woo! And it's everywhere. But I mean, I definitely noticed it at swing dance, and just being able to see women like just as women more and not as my mom. And by as my mom, I mean not as fragile and not as me needing to caretake them. I mean, really that, but it's also like looking back on like so many of the interactions I've had with women romantically or my friends. And it's like, fuck. Just like, fuck, we did that pattern so many times. And I was like so scared of not caretaking other people so many times. Yeah.
Yeah. What helped you? What question helped you see the pattern? And a question is like what emotion held the pattern together that you're able to feel through this week?
Okay. What's the question? I need a second to feel that. One that comes to mind, which used to be one of my principles, is like, what's the intensity and pleasure of this moment? But there's also like, it's also kind of like, how do I want to be right now? Oh, but really what stands out to me is like, how can I be vulnerable right now? Which is a version of how can I let myself be seen? And so, yeah, there you go. So then it's like allowing myself to be seen in like my fear and anxiety that like this random woman is going to get mad at me for no reason, like allows me to see them more clearly. And it reminds me of like, it's not about whether I have anxiety or fear, it's about my relationship with my anxiety and my fear. So like, if I'm vulnerable and let myself see that, then I also have an increased ability to clearly see the other person and see that they don't give a fuck about my anxiety and fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you said, what's the emotion
That held this pattern together?
I would say it's the resistance of joy. Yeah, it's really the resistance to joy, which would be like a fear of feeling abandoned. But it's really the resistance to joy, and that's another thing I talked about a lot this week. Also, I feel like helpful context for people listening to this, like if you know what a view conversation is, I do like 3 view conversations a day. If you don't, I basically swap pure therapy for like 3 hours a day with people, and it rocks. And it's not like it's pure therapy. That's more like this conversation you're listening to, which is like, it's fun and interesting, not like draining and intense and a struggle, even if it's sometimes that. Yeah.
Great. Anything else on this one?
I was something about the resistance to the joy. Yeah. So another thing I realized in my conversations this week was when I let myself fully have my joy and expansiveness and bigness and sexuality, all that energy, I lose the ability to manage you. I lose the ability to seek your approval. I lose my ability to try to control you, to think about me what I want you to think about me. And that's really fucking scary and vulnerable. So that's like a big part of what makes feeling all of that energy and joy vulnerable for me. And then another part of what makes it vulnerable is just how inconsistent, right? It's like I've been repressing joy my whole life. So to not do that admits that I could have not been doing it earlier. And then there's like the grief and the sadness at that. And there's one more piece of that, but I lost it. Can't manage other people, the grief. I forget, but there's a third one.
Awesome.
So
Dang.
Massive W's. I'll go back to you and let me see what I want to ask. I know we're talking about what you learned, but feel free to throw something you learned in there. But like, what's your current growth edge that you're excited to explore next week?
Ooh, next week. Yeah, I would say it has very much to do with the thing I learned, which is regarding sexual shame. I think that's like something a lot of people can relate to, but I never got the talk. That's something
What?
I never got to
Whoa.
talk. All I got from my parents was like, oh no, you're watching porn. Oh no, you masturbated. That's not okay. Don't ever do that in this household. That's what I got. And the conversation I had with Harry this morning was around my sexual shame. It was like, oh, how do I want to be with my sexuality? And he asked a fantastic question, which is, how would you give yourself the talk? And given that I've never had the talk, I was like, oh, let me
Wait, can I
embody.
jump in?
Yes, go for it.
But I know you're about to say it, but you were talking about your ideal parents. If you don't know what that is, look up ideal parent figure protocol, a way to heal attachment problems. But you were talking about your ideal parents. I was like, oh, how would your ideal parents give you the talk?
Yeah.
To like your 13-year-old self. Yeah.
Yeah. And that blew me away. It like actually like absolutely blew me away. I think a lot of my...
Can I jump in here too?
Go
ahead. Can I jump in here too?
Go for it.
And then Samek gave the most banger the talk of all time. Like there's probably literally never been the talk that was that good. He like embodied his ideal father figure, and I'll let you, if you want to say it, you can say it. If you want me to say it, I can try to summarize it, but I want you to say it if you want to. But I just want people to know I felt like I felt like the perfect father, or like maybe God was like giving me the talk, and it was fucking sick. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just being bestowed with wisdom. This is crazy. Back to you.
Okay, that's a lot of expectation. It was a lot of, I don't know if people know what channeling, like it was like very much like, let me embody the ideal father figure, like the ideal masculine father figure.
And whoever's woo channeling, literally you can translate as listening, in my opinion. It's a very deep listening.
Yeah. So I was basically like, okay, this is what it is. This is my version. This is my visualization of the ideal father, masculine figure. Let me channel, let me listen deeply to what they have to say. And I just let it rip, and I just like let it say what they wanted to say as I sat there with Harry listening to him talk, and it was so fucking banger. It started off with like, oh, sick, that's awesome. You masturbated for the first time. You finally found your gift, your divine gift. It was very much like in the context of like, imagine a child of a superhero learning to fly again, like fly for the first time. It was like, oh, you found your superpower. That's fucking awesome. This is,
if you want, it sounds really vulnerable, so you don't have to do this. If you want to, again, listen to your ideal father and speak from that place, I invite you to do that. That sounds really vulnerable, so you don't have to.
I think I'm all right for now. Yeah, I'm just going to give a quick summary.
Sweet.
Which is like, yeah, I was like, oh, this is a gift. You have found your power. You found your like authentic like gift that you can give. And also there was a correlation between like, oh, this is how you were born. This is the power that you had to like, this was the power I had to create life that I was able to use to have you born into this world. This is eros. This is desire. This is a way you can devote your love to people, and you can masturbate to a screen, and that's your devotion. That's your act of divine will that you're giving to a screen. Or you can channel this energy, this like desire, and devote yourself to the ones you love. And really, reality is in a lot of ways love, and like this desire, this energy is a way for you to give to the world. And I was like, I'm sitting there here with Harry, just like listening to myself talk, and I'm just like fucking like getting my mind blown. And it's like, oh yeah, all this sexual energy is life energy, as in it is the thing that we use to create. It is the thing that we use to birth things. And all the sexual shame I had was around death. It was like, oh, this thing is bad. I need to die because of it. This sexuality is wrong, and no one should see it, because if they see it, then they are ashamed. They will shame me, and they will push me away. It was like, oh, I will die if my sexuality is seen. And that's how I lived with it. And seeing it as the polar opposite, not as death, not as the thing that takes away, but the thing that creates, like, as I was giving myself the talk, it was sending shivers down my spine as I was talking, and it was fucking beautiful. And I'm curious about how, like, it landed pretty okay in my system, and I'm also curious about exploring that further, because seeing my sexuality, seeing my desire as some form of divine gift in a way to express and create and birth ideas into the world and use that as a devotion of love to the things I love is a frame that I want to embody. It's like, that's like a fantastic frame with which sexuality fits into, such that I live a more embodied, more beautiful life.
Yeah. I'm going to say something pretty weird, which is like, my normal conception of sexuality is usually pretty like dick focused. But it's like sexuality is like a whole body thing. Like sexuality isn't just like jerking off. Like sexuality is all of the energy. I mean, from the frame you're talking about, it's all of the energy that makes you want to create and love. And I just love, well, there's two things I love that I saw when you were talking about that today. One, the connection between the shame of existence, and if existing is shameful, then surely creating is shameful, because creating brings things into existence. So like the connection between those. And the other one is just like the relationship between sexuality and creation, and the superpower frame, which is like, bro, like, duh, sexuality is a superpower. Like, we can create human life. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? I with a woman can create a human, dude. We can create a human. Are you kidding me? Like that is a superpower. And just, well, another thing that stood out to me was like the ideal father, the divine father giving the talk and being like, this is such a gift. This is such a sacred gift, your sexuality, that this is literally how I created you. This is literally the energy from which I created you. And you are now a fucking living human having an experience, having a conscious experience. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's how much of a gift it is. And to like, what's the word? I forget the word, but to butcher that and to be like, sexuality is like just my dick. It's like, obviously that's part of it, but it's a lot bigger than that.
Yeah. And I'm also noticing, like, the more alive you are, the more you see life as a gift, the less shame there's going to be in like sexuality as a whole. Because if you see life as a gift, then like, if sexuality is your desire, your ability to create, then like creating life, creating anything becomes a gift. While if you see life as a chore, as suffering, as a thing that is pain, then like the creation of life is the creation of suffering and pain. And that's like who wants to create pain? Who wants to create suffering? Like, it makes sense that people add shame to it. It completely makes sense. It's like, oh, I'm adding shame to this because I think life is not inherently worth living. And because of that, my ability, my power, my divine right to create is also shameful.
I'm pissed people can't see us at the same time, but I'm just nodding and I'm just like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's also my growth edge. I think like the people I know who are the biggest are not the best people. Like the biggest as in the ability to take action.
Oh, ability. Is that what's bigness for you? What does bigness mean to you?
Bigness, I mean, as in like an embodied sense of just like moving forward and like taking the next thing you're going to, like, it's like every choice, when it's the exact choice you want to do, has a bigness quality to it. And if you're just continuously taking that big choice, as in the action with the most empowerment, I view you as like extremely big.
Yeah, and just for people, I just want to say for people listening, if they don't resonate with that, like I also see bigness as like expansiveness, but you also said empowerment, which I think,
yeah,
see expansiveness, empowerment. It's like, it's just like, damn, reality is fucking vast, but I'm still fucking moving.
Yeah. And I also shared this with Harry, which is like I met this like pickup artist dude at a party like last week, and he was the biggest person I've ever seen. And like he's not a good, I don't know if he's a good person or not. I'm not gonna label his morality, but it was like, oh, he just like does things. And he does the exact thing he wants to do. And there's like this like lack of any shame around his sexuality.
Anything else on this thing for you?
No, that was good.
Oh yeah. Do you have any final things you want to ask me? We could also wrap up now. What are you thinking?
I think this is a good wrap up, the first ever episode of the Attunement Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We will continue experimenting with this for as long as we're enjoying it.
That's our promise to you. Thanks everyone for listening.